Yes,
All right.
episode. Welcome to episode. This is 21. No, episode 20 of UBI. And today we have Ayo back again. Is this your third time being on
Third,
this?
third, but like technically fourth, because y'all split that one time into two episodes.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, so like
So
third slash fourth. I'm like,
you
is it Grover Cleveland? This is such a weird random thing to God. It's funny how your brain works. I think it's Grover Cleveland.
who
But
is that?
anyway, he's
Former president.
yeah, former president. So they say he messes up the count of presidents because he was president twice, but like someone was in between them.
So if you're number 43 and then and then you went on to be 45.
Right. So you're 43 or 45, and it's like you're not the 40, you're not the 45th human to be president, you're only the 44th. So anyway, he's the one of that number. At least I think it's him. If it's not, then whoops. Now I'm gonna Google it because I hate being wrong. Um
Grover Cleveland, please.
yeah. Yeah.
Wasn't he supposed to be one of the worst presidents ever?
Yeah, he's the only president to serve two non-consecutive terms. Where I don't know. I mean, there's a lot of words. And if he was, I think we have a new a new candidate
Yeah, I mean,
for yeah, but I think his rankings of worst president. Huh. Now I'm curious about this. This some US news ranking. Possibly Trump. Oh, James Buchanan. Where's
I
Grover
think it's
Cleveland? I don't know
Buchanan.
this list.
It's Buchanan.
Yeah, Buchanan. Yeah.
Buchanan that I'm thinking about. Like Buchanan. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's but
Anyway, yeah, sorry. So I'm the Grover Cleveland on UBI. That
yeah,
was such a long.
of UBI, Glover
Yeah.
Cleveland of podcast.
I mean,
This idea,
I'll take it.
this idea of podcasting is, or maybe the time before that, where you talked about how you listen to all different kinds of
Yeah.
podcasts and whatnot. Like what? I mean, obviously with ours, we just talk about whatever. Like
Right.
we're not produced at all. We just
No production, just vibes.
we just go with the flow. But like what? And with me and Maddie, when we talk about the direction, even if we can call it that, like I've always thought it's crazy to have, for instance, like a 3 hour long podcast, right?
Yeah, I agree because that's nuts.
Like,
Like,
so it's not me. I'm like, even
it's like unless you're a truck driver podcast, no one's listening for 3 hours. Like, I mean, maybe they are. I don't know. Whatever.
I mean,
But
no, I don't think
I
anyone.
don't think they are.
No, they're not. I mean, it could be. So Manny is of this, and he's not here to defend himself. But
Let's talk shit about him.
we're gonna throw Manny under the bus today because he's not here. But he basically thinks, like, his own view is it doesn't matter. Like, if you're gonna listen to a 3 hour long podcast, you're just gonna listen to it and then come back to it and then come back to it.
Yeah. And that's probably a factor of who he listens to. I'm gonna like
Exactly. So, and that was my exact point. I'm like, yeah, like if you listen to, say, Joe Rogan, I believe his episodes are like at least 2 hours, 2.5 hours.
yeah.
Sometimes they go over 3 hours. If you listen to that, that makes sense, and that's Joe Rogan, like that format,
Right.
whatever he does. But for most people, I think most people just like to have anyway. I think the sweet spot is probably between 45 minutes and an hour, 15 minutes max.
Yeah. Yep.
And then
Oh my God. This is literally my first time looking up Joe Rogan's like podcast. And first of all, wow, he's at episode 1607. oh my God.
Yeah.
And then I'm looking like 3 hours 42 minutes, 4 hours 20 minutes. Yeah, this is where Manny's getting his bad ideas from. Because I think you can make the argument that yeah, Joe Rogan has really long episodes, but he's also one of the most listened to podcasters. And it's like, yeah, but that's not the reason to do it. The reason to do it is probably the only, it's probably that the case that the only podcaster who can get away with this is the most listened to podcaster, right? It's sort of like how you're so famous that you can do nonsense, but like regular people
It's a
ought to
chicken and
not.
egg it's a chicken and egg problem. And I think the thing with him is he's able to do that because one, he has super interesting people on that people they already bring their own fans.
Right, right.
And whoever the case may be, like whether you want to call them fans or critics or whatnot, but
Yeah.
people that and is podcast is a platform where you can actually hear them for an extended period of time. You
Right. Like, yeah. People that you wouldn't normally hear that much.
Yeah. So for instance, he had Miley Cyrus on at some point. Now, I y- there are many people that like her, and
Yeah.
and for whatever reason they would listen to whatever she has to say. Typically, I don't think anyone has ever really heard Miley Cyrus talk for more than like 5-10 minutes and like this.
Right, right.
Oh, yeah, and then he will go into like whatever issues he's gone into, and
I should listen. I'll find someone that he's interviewed who I like and
yeah.
listen because I cannot become a follower of this guy.
No,
This
no,
is
no,
too many
no.
episodes. This is insane.
I don't think there are many people that listen to his podcast every day, that listen to everything. So
Right, that's the other thing, right? Like how many people are listening to he's he does this every day.
every day,
God. I
Monday
mean,
to
this is
Friday.
like I
Yeah.
mean, is there anything else like that other than like a Big Brother that we get daily content
What do
that
you
is
what do you
that long? I mean, Big Brother like shows, right? Like reality TV that's like 24/7.
So Big Brother is every day.
I mean, they're like it's like when they're in the house, they're in there like 24/7, and so they're like streamed. That I think, well, in the Nigerian one, I should say. I don't. I mean, I even that one I don't watch. But whenever they do the Nigerian Big Brother, and I think the format is the same across the world, there is a camera in the house 24 hours a day, and like there's a channel you can go watch them. But that's like obviously while they're in the house, right? And then I think they probably do like the edited, Sunday thing or whatever for everyone to come watch.
Got it.
Um,
Got it. So what you're
but
saying
I'm,
is
I'm just thinking of another, yeah, like
yeah. So you're saying they live stream these shows and
right, right. Big Brother is like a
oh,
live, yeah, like it's constant.
that is funny. Yeah, but anyway, um, yeah. I mean, personally, it's kind of weird for me to have a podcast just because my personality. Uh,
Yeah, I thought it was hilarious whenever you, Summer, and Manny are talking, and all three of you all are like, "Yeah, we're all introverts." And I was like, first of all, how? I mean, I get it because I think that I have made more effort as an extreme extrovert to understand introverts more in the last few years, just because I realized that some of my good friends are introverts, and
some
I'm
of
such an extreme.
some of your best friends are introverts.
Exactly.
It's like,
Yeah, I have some friends who are
oh my
introverts. Yeah,
God.
introverts love me, but actually they do. Um, but and I think that it's probably the only balance that really works for me. I mean, obviously I have friends who are extroverts too, but like the people I think I can go like really deep as far as friendships with, oftentimes are introverts and date actually. But that's probably just because it's like I've had exes be like, "You talk a lot, and it's nice because then I don't have to talk." And I'm like, "That's an interesting point." And then did you think about this? And I go on and on and on because like I like to talk.
Okay, stop right there. Let's talk about your dating stories. Let's
Oh Jesus!
this is gonna be the most late episode
Oh
ever.
my God!
Don't ring.
Oh I mean I used to do like a Twitter thing called like hashtag she too dates, taking my last name and a kind of like a pun on it because she too shitty, you know?
Ah, got it.
And
Got
then dates is like a whole thing.
it. Got it.
I thought it was funny. Yeah, my dating is most times a disaster, but it can
I
be
love
very
disaster
entertaining.
stories. It's like great, great.
Okay, I have to tell you like a story that you probably don't know. This is one of the Twitter things, and I did like a whole thread on it. It was so funny. So I randomly, I can't remember. I think this was I can't remember exactly what year, but let's say it was 2017. I'm at actually the Chipotle really close to your house. I was at that Chipotle for whatever reason, and I run into this guy that I went to high school with. He was really cute in high school and recently. I mean, this is what, like, now it had been about 10 years from high school. I remember I had a crush on him. I remember I kind of wanted to go to prom with him, but like didn't, whatever. I mean, I probably didn't ask, probably
Was
didn't
he
come
the
up.
kind of guy that every girl wanted to go to prom with, or no?
No, well, not every girl. Like, he wasn't like, because he played soccer. He was can't remember the country now. Oh my god, terrible. He was South American for sure,
Not
or
American.
maybe like Central. Yes, it was Latin America.
Okay, let's give
I think it
examples.
was. No, I want to say Belize, but that
Okay,
doesn't
so he's
add
black.
up. No, he wasn't black. He was Latino, but he wasn't like
You can be
he was
black and
definitely.
Latino. You can be
I
black.
know, I know, I know. I'm terrible.
It's,
He wasn't, but he wasn't like white.
okay, got it.
Like he was definitely like he had that, like, that Greek Italian like
Mhm,
kind
I know
of
what you're talking
color.
about.
Yeah,
You
but
saw him, you wouldn't say that's a white guy,
right, like you would not ever think he was white, but you also you would know he was
but
Hispanic.
you wouldn't always say he's black.
Right. I mean, he definitely was black. Oh my god, I can't remember the country, but let's say Venezuela. No, it wasn't Venezuela.
Was is it? So you say, okay, you say he's Latino. So I was gonna say, is
Yeah.
it Mexican country is from, because there are a few small countries in
No,
Caribbean.
he's definitely Spanish, and it's so weird because it's not even important, right? Like, maybe like
It doesn't matter. I mean,
yeah, let's say Venezuela, right? Like, I don't know. It is. It's
he's,
irrelevant to the
he's
story.
from Caracas. Okay, go ahead.
Right. So, but we were cool partly because like he played soccer, loved soccer, right? Like, random. Like, we had a class together and we would talk about like soccer. And I'm very good at like, if I like somebody and they're interested in something, like, I'll learn a little bit about it. Like, whatever, it's nothing. I'll be out here
So
talking about the NBA.
you bought a soccer book. Is that what happened?
I ain't buy a soccer book, but like, I mean, also like, I'm Nigerian, right? Like, in soccer is everywhere, so like I just keyed in just a little bit more than I normally did. So anyway, so I run into him, and he's like, "Oh my god, it's good to see you." It's like one of those like really nice conversations that makes you walk away going, "Oh my god, maybe he also had a crush on me back then," or all this nonsense, right? Anyway, it's kind of like, "Oh, good to see you," blah blah blah, right? Like, I'm grown. I understand that like you're gonna run into people and that conversation is going to start and end there, right? But then he goes, "Oh my god, we should get together sometime," and I was like, "Oh yeah, cool, whatever, right?" Leave, because again, that's a thing that people say. Well, then he messages me on Facebook. We were Facebook friends from high school, right? And he's like, "Oh yeah, like for real, we should get together sometime." And I was like, "Okay." And then now I'm like, I mean, you're really trying to get together, bro? Like, what's up? Right. And again, he's still very cute. So then he says, and I'm still, not trying not to jump to conclusions.
Oh,
But then he goes, and this is just why movies ruin all of our lives. He goes, "Okay, how's Friday night at 7:30, right?" And I was just like, "Okay, that's a date. Like, Friday 7:30."
okay. Pause right there. Pause right there. See, this is what I tell people. Ever make assumptions.
Yeah. And this is a story about assumptions and how assuming makes an ass out of you and me.
Okay, because I'm like, what is that? My head is okay. nothing beyond that.
Yeah, like Friday is just when I'm available, right? Like it's just logical. It's like I'm done with work. You probably work downtown. We live in the suburbs. It makes sense. You're right. Like
I don't have to be up early on Saturday.
right, like it's not brunch because you don't have to deal with the awkwardness of the whole. I mean, again, you know, should have made sense. So anyway, I'm thinking about this day, getting kind of excited, but also like, so then I think the night before he messages me. I don't remember what it was about, but then I like in my mind, I'm like 99% sure this is a date, right? 99% sure.
I'm afraid we're
But but that 1% is lingering. And so, I was feeling low ball. I was like, I'm gonna text him and ask him if it's a date. I was like, this is a date, right? So that's literally what I text. Oh, Jesus, Lord have mercy.
Oh
And he's like, oh my God, I'm so sorry.
my
Guy, I wanted to cancel. I wanted because he's like, oh, I'm so sorry. No, I just meant like, like let's like meet up and catch up. He's like, oh, and actually my friend is coming. Because at this point, the only thought in my mind is he's brought his friend because this crazy girl thinks it's a date. And now, like, like, bringing a friend is so obviously, clearly, like, even if I had any suspicion, right? Like, as soon as he says he's bringing a friend, it's not like, obviously, it's not a date unless you need a chaperone for some reason because you're Amish or something, but he's not. So, anyway. I just thought, oh my God, I am an idiot. And I assumed it was a day, or like he didn't say it was, blah, 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 whatever, right? And you know what he might have said when we finally agreed on where to go? He was, oh, cool, it's a date, right? I don't know. I don't remember. Probably didn't. But yeah, so he's like, my friend is coming. And I was like, okay, no problem. Now, this is like the day before the date, right? So the entire 24 hours before, now I'm like, oh my God, this is embarrassing. I should cancel. I should say I'm sick. I just say I have too much work. And then I was like, oh my God, what if so I have this like horrible, horrible fear now that people I haven't talked to in a while, when they reach out or when they ask to hang out, they're going to try to sell me on some MLM thing because it happens. Like 80% of the time when someone I haven't talked to in years is like, hey, oh my God, we should like catch up. They are going to start to tell me about Amway and how I can retire in 2 years with billions by signing up on, like it's always that, right? So like in my mind,
how weird. Like what the?
I'm not hanging out with them. That's the real thing. Like people I went to like high school with, like this girl literally happened a couple of months ago. A girl I hadn't spoken to in like 5 years reaches out to me and she's like, yeah, my partner and I are like working on this retail online business. And I was just like, you're saying a lot of buzzwords. Like what, eventually it took forever for her to get to it because first she was like, if you're interested in like learning a little bit more, because that's how they do it. They're like, oh, like you can learn just a little bit more, right? And you're like, okay, I'm not gonna be rude and say no, I don't want to learn anything more, right?
You're rude. Yeah,
it's hard though because the thing is, if someone came to you and said, hey, Lai, would you like to get into an MLM scheme? You would be like, no thanks, right? Like that's easy. But when someone calls you and says, hey, like my friend and I started working on this investment opportunity that's like really cool. Like man, like my other friend who does it, like he now like lives in Bali and travels all the time. It doesn't work, right? You're kind of like, oh, tell me more, right?
Okay, so
because I don't live in Bali and not work. Speaking of Bali, we can go back to Bali.
Because like I'm like, okay, live in Bali. Okay, can we get to? I'm like,
right, and because that's what they do, right? They tell you all these other things about the person who's a millionaire now, and it's like, look, okay, like some people can be like, what's the thing, right? So anyway, like now I'm starting to think that like I was like, oh my God, I'm gonna go out with this boy and his friend, and they're gonna be talking to me about an MLM thing, and like, ugh. So now I'm like, whatever, fine. Anyway, I'm running late because I was at Big Law at the time, and so this definitely had to be like 2017 or late 2016, because of work. And I was like, hey, I'm so sorry, I'm running a little late. So I probably got there about 30 minutes late, and the whole thing just felt like a comedy of errors because I get there, by the time I walk in, and it was this restaurant in it's close to St. Edward's University. It's this Italian restaurant. It's one of those places where like you get in line, you order, they give you the little thing, you go sit down, and then they bring the food to you. And that day they were running really late because again, it's a Friday night, it's date night. I get there late. In my mind, okay, yeah, it's not a date because this is one of those things I always feel like. I don't think that my expectations of men, especially that I interact with, are not that different from men I'm dating versus like men I'm just friends with, right? Like I think that there's like respect, politeness, like if you're waiting on a friend who says they're running a little late, you shouldn't order and start eating, right? Like you just shouldn't. Maybe appetizers for the table, but you're not about to be halfway through your burger. Like, come on, like it just is a little rude, right? So I get there, they waited for me, but like they had ordered. So like by the time I get through the line and order my food and come sit down, their food is already here. My food is 30 minutes away. And they're like, oh, I was like, you guys can start eating. They're like, no, it's fine. We'll wait for you. And now I'm like, we all look stupid because I'm waiting for my food. Your food is sitting here getting cold. If you wanted to be so respectful, you shouldn't have ordered at all. But anyway, they're sitting there and like, oh, the other thing I had thought about before too, I was like, what if he's gay? I was like, that would make sense because then he's really just trying to catch up and he's going to bring his boyfriend. So it's not awkward. Just like thinking through all these things, everything other than like it's just he and his homeboy that he just wants to have a 3-person dinner with because it's weird, right? Like, hey, friend I haven't seen in 10 years, let's catch up. By the way, let me bring this other person who you don't know to dinner. Like it doesn't make any sense unless he brought the friend. So it's like, I don't know, maybe he thought I was going to jump him or something. Like, I don't know. It's very weird.
You guys get it. But yeah, so let me ask you this. Why did you feel the need to clarify if this was a date or not? Like,
in my mind, like I said, it was like I was 99% sure that it wasn't. But like there was a 1% suspicion. And like, if I knew if it was a date versus not a date, right? Like maybe I would have put a little more effort into my appearance. Maybe I would have like, I don't know. I like to know things. I'm an overthinker, right? So like in that week before I have thought about our wedding, divorce, and children, and whether he's doing MLM, what does he do with his life now? Like I'm checking on his Facebook, okay? Yeah, like all like some of it is stupid, some of it is not. You said what?
I said you already figured out whether he does coke or not.
Like, look, I need to know these things. You know what I'm saying? Also because it's like I just wanted context, right? Because it's like like I should say we were cool in.
Wait a minute. But you said you wanted context. What does that even like? What does that mean? Like
we were cool in high school. We weren't like friends. We didn't like hang out outside of school. We had, I think it was senior year. We had like a class or two together and used to talk all the time in class.
Got it.
But like I didn't have his number in high school. Like in my so it's one of those where it's like we were cool, but like I didn't like catch up is such an interesting when people say like, oh, let's catch up. I'm like, we didn't really have that much to start with, to be real honest.
Talk to all the time in high school. Like that totally makes sense to me that you want to catch up. Like
why? For what? To do what?
Are you kidding me? If I met somebody that I talked a lot with in high school and I'm like, oh, let us catch up. Like that's not.
I start thinking, especially when it's a guy who seems single, and I'm single. I'm thinking like
what it is. So if, for instance, you this was someone that you went to high school with and was married, or it was that had a significant other.
Low key, I'm like, oh, why do you want to catch up?
You still be suspicious. Oh, that is
a little bit. Yeah,
that is.
Wait, if it's a married man, now I'm thinking either it's MLM. Or for some reason, he's trying to like step out on his partner.
Even though you guys hung out in high school, or
and that's why, like, I think, like, I had in the what's it called, in the like scale of friends from high school, he wasn't like a close high school friend. You know what I mean? Like, I mean, I went like high school is not that long ago as far as like technology. Or like we didn't have each other's number. So it's not like we were like homies. Like we were cool. Like we had the class together and we talked in that class, but like it's not like we're like walking, like had lunch together. You know
Like
what I mean?
go
Like
to
it's
the
like
mall on Saturdays together.
exactly like we weren't like it wasn't that serious. Like if it had ended at Chipotle, like, oh my God, it's so good to see you. How are you? Blah, 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 chat, and then that's done. That made more sense for the context of how I knew him before.
I mean,
But like that intentional now, let's like it's one of those things I'm like, it's like, when you're like, is this person gonna ask me for money? It's like when your phone rings, right, from somebody that you haven't talked to in a long time, you're like, are they gonna ask me for money? Are they like, oh, Larry's a lawyer, let me call him and ask him
I
legal
don't know who your
questions?
friends are because when people call me that I haven't talked to in a long time, that is the. I mean,
You
yeah,
really think they just want to catch up? Lies.
no, I mean, so okay, let me put it this way. Sometimes it is because they want to ask something. So,
Yeah, and I'm just like, get to it.
but
Get
but
to it.
but I don't automatically pull up this guard.
It's not that I put up a wall. I think it depends, right? Obviously, if they are going to ask me for something I can't give them, I want them to get to the ask as quickly as possible so that I can give the response as quickly as possible because it doesn't feel genuine. Because I think oftentimes, and maybe there might be a gender sort of difference here, right? Like, because I think that even a lot of my guy friends, when they want, not friends, people that I'm like cool with, when they want to ask for a favor, oftentimes they pepper it with so much extra that I'm like, yo,
Just get to the point.
get to it, right? Like I used to have a friend, like this was in law school, who like he was a grad student, didn't have a car. He was like an international student, whatever. Every time he needed a ride, ayo, what's up now? Ayo. And I'm just like, bruh, where you need me to pick you up from? Just get to it because these 5 minutes of you trying to hail me and make me feel special, it's not authentic. So it's like you're wasting my time because I was eating and now my food is cold because you wanted to say all these random words that like didn't mean anything. So I
Yeah,
think that that's part of it, and I think like because I've gotten like even at work now, like recently people have been like, one of the great things about you is you get right to it, and I'm like, am I not supposed to? And I always joke that people think that I'm a man sometimes from like my emails, and sometimes I think it's because I'm very like, look, if it doesn't need to be more than a sentence, it's not going to be more than a sentence. I'm not gonna, hi, how are you? Hope you had a great weekend. Hope your family is well. By the way, could you send me no, like, please send me this document. Done. Like nothing. So anyway, I think that like so because I like straightforward and I feel like people don't often do that, I'm always like, hey, let's catch up. How are you? I just want to see how things are. It's been a long time. I'm like, what do you want? Like, just tell me because if I have it, I'll give it to you. If I don't, or if I don't want to, then I'll say no. And like, your let's catch up and be warm and fuzzy is not going to add anything to it. But anyway,
yeah,
that was just a funny. I mean, dinner ended up being fine. It just
yeah. They didn't
the
have it.
whole setup was awkward
It doesn't
as
sound,
hell.
it doesn't sound that much like a disaster. Like as much as
The disaster was all in my head, really.
but
I mean, and the fact that he brought his friend, I felt like was definitely a very clear.
so let me ask you this. Ask you this. Let's assume you thought it was a date, whatever the case,
Uh-huh.
and and at some point you never clarified and whatnot, and at some
Mm-hmm.
um you found out that it was bringing somebody else, like
Oh man, I felt awkward as hell.
why
I
would
like that I knew. I like that I knew going in. Well, because as soon as I get there and I see that someone is there, now I know it's not a date. The evening is not going to go any differently, right?
that's what I was gonna say, like
Yeah, no, the evening's not going to go any differently. But it's like, I mean, I might flirt a little bit. Well, I mean, now I'm not going to because this friend is there. But I think that, like, okay, so like, what if I had left? I mean, I wouldn't have done this because it literally practically didn't make any sense. But what if I had left work an hour early to go get cute for this date and I get there? It's not a date. I would have felt silly. I don't like feeling silly.
no. So I mean, you felt silly. Feeling silly is kind of like in your head, right? Like
Right, for sure.
but materially doesn't mean anything. You will have
Yeah,
preferred.
I think the evening would have gone exactly. And and oftentimes, right, the difference between a date and just like a meeting up or hanging out or whatever is, the fact that somebody says it's a date or that there's an attraction there or whatever.
Yeah, this story is not like as big of a deal. Like you gotta have other like major disasters, like
Uh,
hurricane,
like,
like like
well,
have
like
you?
I feel like I'm
Like,
trying to think.
I feel like
Well, I mean, some disasters are like not funny, right? It's
okay,
like
okay.
yeah, like it's like
Yeah,
it's not something I'm like I thought that I might lose my life, so
but
that's not
there's gotta
good.
be some. There's got to be some disaster stories from Nigeria, for instance. And I say that
Oh
because
my God, yeah. I mean, well, so
go
go
ahead.
ahead. Oh, I was gonna say that, like, yeah, my so Nigeria was interesting, right? Like, not any like so there's one like that's it's not really funny. I mean, it's really funny. Okay, so this guy I met, and some of again, a lot of the things that go insane are like in my mind.
Mhm.
And I'm not going to get into like the specific details of the things that were very questionable that weren't funny. But I went into this guy at a some like
Suya Johnny,
printing store, and they're like a copy, like I had to print some stuff, whatever, right?
like
And he
ankles.
yeah, and he had a shirt on that was like a shirt from a company that I'm really good friends with the CEO. And I used to go to the office all the time. So in my head, he worked there and he looked familiar, right? So in my head, and it was this thing that eventually, like literally this incident made me stop dating in Lagos until I ended up dating my ex. Because I was like, my judgment is terrible in Lagos. And this
Why?
is not the city.
What do you mean your judgment is terrible in Lagos?
Like it just felt like so again, because there's a certain sense that like you meet someone
You don't speak
when
smart.
I meet a stranger, I had to like as far as dating, I just was like, I don't think that I can ramp up the Lagos smarts that I need, and so I'm just not gonna engage because this is bullshit, right? Like from there's a guy your brother introduced me to that turned out to be married. That's a
Oh,
whole
wow.
one.
I'm gonna
I,
go like, brother. I'm like, yo,
Yo, I really like. I was like, bro, like
did
he's
he know?
married,
Did he know?
and I honestly don't think he knew.
Okay, so
But then he was like, oh, well, he's separated now, something like that. And I was like, yo, but like, later on, I went to your brother's house to like drop off something or pick up something, and his wife was there. I was like, sis, come on, hear this story because this man was married. Like, yeah, he was separated at the time. He might be divorced now or back together. Who knows? But like, separated is married. Period. Right? Like, it's married. Like, you're like, look,
I have a lot of thoughts about that. Separated is married, but
it is.
it
It is married that is contextual, right? Like, so then as a single woman, I can make a decision
so
about.
so what I mean by that, what I meant is, I think you have to, as long as there's
I've lost you. As long as you're what?
as long as there is transparency.
Right.
Yeah.
With anything, right? Look, even married, as long as there's transparency, not me, but people can make their choices, right? Like about it. And granted, like very quickly I realized he was married, and separate, so like that, got cleared up. It wasn't like a
Okay.
conceited, effort to like
Yeah.
defraud me, right? Like
Yeah,
it was just funny because I was just like, because I looked the guy up and he, anyway. But that one was just funny. So the one with this guy from, let's call it Kinko's. So I see him. He's wearing this shirt. My brain tells me this is a familiar face, And so like I think that like I didn't have my guard up that I would if like a random guy at Kinko's is like, you're really pretty. Let's go grab dinner. In my head I was like, oh, this guy knows. This other guy I know, blah blah, like whatever. Turns out that I had met him at something completely different, like some startup tech thing. But like his face was familiar, and because he had that shirt on, I was like, oh, I must know him from XYZ, right? Because that was one of those things in Lagos. Like it always felt important to know someone in the context, right? Other people that know them. If someone needs to like beat them up if they do something stupid, right? It's just like you can't just be out here going out with random like proper strangers. I don't think I ever did. Anyway, so this guy, so we ended up actually like that same day. He was like, hey, I'd love to grab dinner with you tonight. And I was like, that's nice. Normally, guys will like take their sweet time. Like you meet someone in the afternoon and they'll literally like, let's grab dinner tonight. I was like, okay, I like someone being forward. I like them being like very, whatever, right? So cool.
That is that is probably unique to you too. I mean, I don't know, but like in
What do you
terms,
mean?
like saying you met somebody same day and they're like, let's grab in. Like, as if you don't have shit to do. Like, I feel like
No,
someone.
I mean,
You think I have? Like,
first of all, in Lagos, I really didn't have shit to do, right? And like he obviously, well, turns out he was leaving
oh, I
town
got it. Okay. That's
in a few days, and he was gonna be yeah, so like he was leaving town in a few days, and he was gonna be gone for a few months.
Oh yeah.
So I think on his end, and this was like I literally the reason I was in Kinko's was like NYSC registration and stuff. Which for listeners who have no idea what that is, it's like this mandatory youth service to Nigeria thing that I decided to go do because I quit my job, and I was like, I guess that gives me purpose for a year. And there's just a ton of paperwork for that, so that's what I was doing. So anyway, he was like, oh, let's grab dinner, blah blah. But wait, hold on. You said you think it's unique to me. That what part of it would be unique? Do you think is unique to me? That I appreciate someone wanting to go out that night?
Yeah, so that's what I'm not the forward part. I think a lot of crazy ambiguity about dating will be cleared up if people just kind of I don't know. Like I've always felt like if people declare their intentions early,
Yeah.
you can kind of like even if you're not sure, you can kind of like just understand where someone is going.
Right.
You
And
you can
and
ask,
that's become important to me, right? Like I think that because I don't want to be guessing whether or not it's a date, right? Because I'm an overthinker and my brain is going to go to 2,000 places. But when my brain doesn't overthink? It's when someone is really clear. Right? It's like, hey, like this is a date, or hey, I want to talk to you about a business thing that I'm working on, right? Then I know what it is. Because oftentimes I think that, especially men, right? Like will, in my context anyway, will try to be ambiguous, right? Like, it's like, you want to talk about this, but you're acting like it's one thing. And it's like, look, come through with it. Don't say you want to talk business when you're really trying to holler, right? Like, it's like, just be clear. But yeah, I like, and it's like, if I'm not down, I'm not down. You're not going to, like, right? Like, you just go slide it. Oh, by the way, I like you when I date you in the middle of a business meeting, which they do. But also like just dating in Nigeria is just like bananas. It's a very different experience. But so we go to dinner. It was a good time, and he's like, it got a little weird in my opinion. But especially with dating in Nigeria, right? Like I'm still trying to like figure out like norms. Like, is this appropriate here? And I just think it's weird because of my American brain. Because he's like, oh, let's go to the movie. Let's see a movie tomorrow. And he's like, or we can go get like a massage. And I was like, that's really weird. Like, I'm not gonna go get couples massage with a guy I just met. Like, that's kind of weird. And he was like, oh yeah, you're right. Okay, we can go see a movie. I was like, all right, cool. So again, I'm not doing much with my life, right? That's why I'm available. So I was like, yeah, sure. So we go out the second night. He picks me up in an Uber. We go to this restaurant. We have dinner. We afterwards go to this wine like place. It's very, very cute. It's a wine bar. Anyway, so we go there. We grab, and I definitely would not on a normal occasion have like 2 glasses of wine with a guy that, again, random stranger, right? But because my wires in my brain are tripped and I think like this is someone I know, which again, it's stupid, but that's why I was like, look, we don't trust your judgment anymore. You're not allowed to date. Like that was a conversation I had with myself afterwards.
You're not allowed.
Because I was like, you're an idiot. Like, anyway, so I have like 2 glasses of wine. I'm now like sleepy. So like we get it. So I requested the Uber to get back. And I get in the Uber and I fall asleep, which again is like
you did what?
No, I'm telling you, it's like I was not like
wait. All because you thought of the
and again, in retrospect, right? This is me explaining this like 2 years after, right? Or 3 years. This was all, yeah.
Okay.
At the time, it wasn't like, oh, because I recognize this man from something and he looks familiar to me. It was just because like I immediately became comfortable with him from like the first day we hung out, right? I was just like, oh, like, so it's like it just felt like that, like the same way. And maybe this isn't the best of life things, but like if I was out with like a really good friend of, if I got to Lagos and one of my really good friends was like, or my cousin was like, oh, you should go with my friend, right? Like, somebody that you feel like you're like, this person is like,
They're
it's
already
just the
vetted,
sense of, you said what?
someone that has already been pre-vetted to some degree.
Exactly. It's just like, okay, I can put my guards down a little bit and just enjoy myself and not like be thinking they're gonna murder me, right? So I fall asleep in this Uber, which again is insane. And mind you, I requested the Uber on my card, and I had put in my address so that I could get dropped off and then he would go home. And I didn't intentionally fall asleep. It was just like two glasses of. I feel like I don't remember what kind of wine it was, but because there's some wine that makes me like really hyper, and then there's some that puts me to sleep, and I guess this was the put me to sleep kind of wine. Anyway, so I you said
Anyway,
what?
I was gonna say, like, are you sure it wasn't like they put something in your wine too?
No, it wasn't because it wasn't like like it was just like anyway. So because this place is like
Okay,
in
great.
one part of the town, it's in Ikoyi. I live in VI. And I wake up. I wake up and we're in Lekki, and I was like, oh. Actually, I wake up as we're pulling into the gate of this hotel that he's staying at because his house is getting fumigated. Mind you, all of these could have been lies, right? The part that he's leaving town in a couple of days, the part about staying at a hotel because his house is getting fumigated, because it doesn't make sense if you really think about it. Like, you're about to leave town for 3 months. Why is your house getting fumigated 2 days before you leave town? Doesn't make sense. But anyway, I'm an idiot. Whatever. So I wake up as the Uber is pulling into his hotel.
I'm sorry.
He's probably married with 3 kids. That's probably
Oh my god, like your boy.
Yeah, like she's mad. So anyway, so like I wake up and this is one of those conversations that like happens a lot on Twitter about like how a lot of times women are taught or we just kind of socialized to like not overreact, because like in my mind, right, if I wake up, like in my mind, if my little girl cousin is telling me, I'd be like, yo, if you wake up in an Uber and you're somewhere you didn't plan to be, you need to be like, all right, good night, and get out of the Uber and get the fuck out, right? Like that's what you should do. But in my mind, in that situation, I'm not thinking that, because I was like, okay, yeah, I fell asleep, and yeah, whatever. We're at this. He should have woken me up and said,
Let me ask you this. When you requested the Uber, typically you will enter an address.
yeah, I put in my house address. He told the Uber driver to drive to Nigeria is ridiculous. Like, this is not even surprising at all. The Uber driver is like, yeah, the woman who requested the ride, whose picture and name I see on here, put in one address. She's asleep. This man is going to tell me where to go, and I'm going to drive him there because whatever. Like, it's all ridiculous. This is all like insane. Anyway, so he's kind of like, yeah, I don't remember if I was like, oh, why are we here? And I was just like, okay, fine. He's like, yeah, you just come up, chill for a little bit. And I was like,
what time was
fine.
it?
I mean, this is late night. This is probably like midnight, or later than midnight. I don't know. And so he's like, yeah, you want to like watch a movie? And I was like, and like now, like it's like, if you were talking about going to see a movie in a movie theater, that makes sense. It's like a thing that you do with someone. But I was like, I'm gonna come sit and watch a movie on your laptop in a hotel. I'm like, that just doesn't make any sense, like at all. So in my mind, I was like, you know what? I'll play along with this foolishness for like a few more minutes, and then like I'll leave.
Don't play along with foolishness. But anyway,
I know and I shouldn't have, because the rest of the evening I'm not going to discuss, because this is a public platform. We can talk about it offline. The rest of the evening, I mean, it wasn't like, let's just say whenever I did leave, it was not that much later, and like my phone was about to die, And I was like, I need to get an Uber and get the out of here ASAP before this gets any weirder and like crazy. And I remember like like I got an Uber, got a which is tricky, right? For Nigeria, it's like, I mean, it was fine. Like getting an Uber at 2 a.m. was not that crazy. But like, what if I couldn't get an Uber, right? Like I would have had to like get a hotel room in that hotel and like be like, don't tell this person where I'm at, like that kind of stuff. So definitely could have been a lot worse. But that like I got back home and like I think he texted me like, oh, hope you made it fine. And I was just like, look, we're not doing this. Like I'm not interacting with you ever again. And that was kind of the end of that. But like I really had like it was really a come to Jesus moment because I was like, yo, like I like what?
So when you say come to Jesus moment, do you mean like you
With
started?
myself.
Yeah,
And I
yeah.
like stopped dating. Like I didn't like this was like January. And I literally like because then I came to the US for about a month and then went back. And I didn't date, talk to, go on a date, nothing until July that year. And even that July, like I didn't really plan to. It was just that like just kind of happened like with my ex. Like he had been like trying to talk to me for a while, and I was kind of like, you know what, I'm bored. You can hang out. And I knew him from a very specific context where like we knew a lot of the same people, all of this stuff, and so that was like But even then, like, because I was just like, I can't date in Lagos. Clearly, I need to be like supervised because I'm out here being stupid. Like
It is a bit supervised.
no, I was like, look, I need a chaperone. I need somebody to clear my text. I need
Yeah,
somebody to pre-vet these people because what? It just
yeah.
and it was just one of those where I was like, okay, clearly my instincts had been blunted by something.
I think the last time you were on this show, like we talked a little bit about this. It was like a hashtag something on Twitter about when I believe it was some lady that accused some guy who was in the tech scene in Nigeria of sexual assault or something like that. Do you remember this?
I remember we were talking about sexual assault. I don't remember the exact event that because I mean there's so many.
Yeah.
So
So well, there was this particular guy. I think
talk
his
about Kendall?
yeah,
Okay.
yeah,
Oh yeah, I remember that. It was like a thing that wasn't like rape. It was one of those
yeah.
others. Yeah.
And and I remember just reading like so many. I don't remember what specifically the hashtag was about.
Hmm.
I just started reading like a lot of
Yeah.
young women like were just
Oh, and this guy was a tech guy.
yeah, this guy was a
So,
tech guy.
yeah.
But they were
Yeah,
just
I'm talking about the one that I went out with, the one that was not very
oh,
well. Yeah.
it was a tech guy too.
Yeah, yeah, it was
I thought he
some
was a
anyway,
tech
I'm not
guy. So, but I
yeah,
heard,
definitely.
like different stories, and people would not necessarily about this specific guy, but like
Right.
their
Right.
dating slash assault.
Yeah.
It is brutal out there.
It is nuts.
It is brutal out there.
And I think what it is why there's a spotlight on the tech bros is not because it's there's a sense that because tech is forward, we're leapfrogging. A lot of these people have a lot of progressive views. There's an expectation, I think, for the women that interact with them because it's all mostly heterosexual context. There's an expectation for those women that these men are more progressive, right? And it's nonsense, but it's somewhere in there. You're just like, oh, these people are like, how can a guy that talks about crypto also now say that a woman can't say no? Like it's just there's something there that just seems, for whatever reason, that like, okay, we're in a country that in a lot of ways can be very backward. So people who are very not backwards and very progressive are probably progressive in other ways, which is just not true because these men are not acting any different from like the average,
Yeah,
guy, but
those
for
guys,
some reason,
those guys are of that society too. They just happen.
yeah, exactly. They just happen to like code.
They
They just code and got investments. That's it.
exactly. I mean,
But
I mean, like I remember, like there is this caricature of the way you say, um, like you have some young women like that work in banking, and really working in bank.
Oh, right.
It's not like there is
It's
a
like
lot of
lightweight
that
prostitution.
comes with those women's jobs, right? Like trying to like
Yeah.
talk to people that have access to capital. They're talking to men that are as old as their fathers, and it's like just
Yeah.
disgusting, nasty. Um,
Yep.
like this. Yeah, it's just this ridiculous culture.
It's very problematic in a lot of ways, and I'm always glad, especially in the Nigerian context, where the women are starting to speak up because oftentimes, yeah, like here we know that the cost of speaking up is really high, but that there I think it's even higher because it's so normalized that a lot of people are like, you may not be able to get another job, you may not be able to like, you know,
It is so normal.
move your career.
I really
It's
wish. I know that some men started speaking up as well, but I just really wish that you know that that happens more. I
and that they would speak up then, right? Like speaking up later when it's like guys don't call out men
Yeah.
and
So in a way that they really call out those folks, not just
yeah.
abstractly like sexual assault is bad. Like
Right. It's like, yeah, no kidding. Like let's talk. And
no,
I think like one of the one of my strategies, especially when Nigerian men say nonsense to me, because this happens with Nigerian men in Nigeria and here. I like to like this is it's very annoying to them. But I like to just ask questions. And so like I remember an example of a guy who like much older than me, probably old enough to be my dad, to be honest, was
yeah.
messaging me, a Nigerian guy here in Houston, but Nigerian guy. And he randomly was like, you said what?
I said Nigerian dad.
I right. And he was like, "Oh, we should go play golf together. I can teach you how to golf." Like it was like a very like we hadn't had many interactions before, and this is like a
Oh
Facebook.
my God.
And
I
I
mean,
just was like,
no,
I was like, no, thanks. Mind you, I have like a whole set of golf clubs. I've not opened the box yet. This is also, I was in big love. I was gonna golf my way to partnership or whatever, which, God forbid now. But anyway, I was just like, no, that his it was, and it was one of those that was like it was gonna be like 5 a.m. on a Saturday morning. Anyway, I was like, nah, bro. And I remember just being like, no, and he's like, no, it's not a problem. It's not like I'm not gonna hurt you. And I was like, can I ask you a question? And he's like, sure. I was like, do you have any sisters? And he's like, yeah. I was like, so imagine your sister calls you and says, hey, bro, this guy. And as soon as I get to like, this guy on Facebook, he's like, it's not like that now. And I'm like, no, 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 no. I'm asking you a question. And this is just a random hypothetical. Your sister calls you and says, this guy who I've interacted with once on Facebook wants to go golfing Saturday at 5 a.m., wants to teach you how to golf. What do you think, bro? And like every time I put it like that, they get so defensive. And I'm just like, but why are you defensive if this wasn't weird? And if this wasn't, like, because right? It's like only because in that context it's your sister and she's a real person and you think about her, you care about her. And I'm just a face on a messenger bobblehead. Like, no, I'm not going, like I do that all the time. And it's always like, it sucks because I shouldn't have to ask for someone to be considerate when they think about it as their mother, sister, wife, brother, niece, whatever. But oftentimes, unfortunately, men are like, it's like this thing that happens on Twitter all the time where it's like, oh man, it's when I had a daughter I realized how dangerous the world is for women. It's like your wife. Yeah, you're like, nah, she's good, she's a big girl, but it's your daughter that you finally start to realize that like women are people and the world is hard for women and women get beat up and hurt and killed. And it's like, yes, no kidding. Like,
it's supposed to be
be a human.
like So if you have a son, it's okay.
Right, they're like, no about that.
Because you're
It's the TI strategy, police your daughter's
oh my
body and everything and let your sons do whatever.
yeah,
Did you hear all this stuff that's been coming out about TI?
yeah. I saw. I mean, he got dragged.
I'm talking about like apparently he and his wife may or may not allegedly have been involved in like sexual assaults and kidnappings.
What?
It's a unfolding situation, but there have been some accusations by several women that the couple have allegedly sexually assaulted them. There's something about kidnap. I just read it and I was like, I cannot wait for this to continue to, you know,
Wow.
whatever, develop because of course then people start to tie it to like his being overtly protective over his daughter and her body. And it's like, well, yeah, probably because he is the thing that goes boom in the night, right? Like it's like you, and oftentimes I think that that's what it is when men are like that. I'm like, it's because you or your friends or people you were close with were doing those bad things. So now you're like painfully aware that someone you care about may be the victim of the kinds of things that you've done. That's the only reason you care. Anyway, whatever. It's what it is.
Yeah.
Switching topics.
Yeah, I didn't know about Tia. Yeah, we spent an
Yeah.
hour talking about.
I know. About dating and disasters. I'll have to think of more interesting dating disaster stories. There is a guy recently who I hope never listens to this who this was really we met off like an app, right? And we're in the middle of a pandemic, so we haven't met up. And I finally had to stop talking to him because I realized he was. I don't know if he was intentionally trying to be. I don't know what the word is. So very early conversation, he's like, "You look so different from your pictures," and I'm like,
Where did you?
"Okay." On a dating app where I have like 7 pictures and at least 2 of them I have no makeup on, so whatever. But he's like, yeah, you look so, because we would video call, right? That's why.
Oh,
That's
yeah.
how he saw me. Yeah.
Okay.
So he's like, yeah, you look so different from your pictures, and I'm like, I mean, I don't know what to tell you. Like, it's me, and like he said it so many times, and one time he like was like, man, you're like a catfish, and I was just like, look, I mean, I didn't say this, but I wanted to be like, look, if you're looking for a way to say that you don't think I'm cute or you think I'm cuter in my pictures, first of all, you ain't got to say all that. Just like stop talking to me. Like it's not that deep. But also, of course, one of our Nigerian men, because I do have a dating preference for Nigerian, and it is what it is. And so I oftentimes have to do a lot of the foolishness. But I was like, bro, like it just seemed like if he had mentioned it once, I would have been like, oh, he's just like, oh, you look different. Also, it's like the pictures I put on my dating profile are different from how I look at 10:30 p.m. on a video call before I go to bed. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, it's like, is that not normal to you? Do you not know any women? Like, I got my bonnet on, I got like my face,
I mean,
you know.
okay. So there's this question I want to ask. So you said
Okay.
this person doesn't listen to this. So like, why do you care if they listen to this? And then know that
Okay.
you actually feel this way.
Well, I've learned this about myself that I am uncomfortable with people's reactions to my truth, right? So I don't care about the thing that I've said,
Mhm.
but if they now hear it and they don't like it and they send me a 2-page email
Yes,
about it,
please.
I don't like that. I would like that to never happen, right? And so I'm okay with people finding out things I feel about them as long as they never interact with me about it, right? Like, don't tell me how you feel, don't tell me what you thought when you heard it. Like that, I don't like it. And so if there's anything I can do to avoid, because I've literally like not in a podcast context, but like said something to someone like this one guy, oh, he was weird. And he sent me like a 4, like when you're like it fills your phone screen like 4
Right.
times, like a 4-page like response, and I was just like, oh hell no. You're
Are you
not.
gonna have time to write that? Like, are you
I don't. He was a law student at the time, so he obviously had a lot of thoughts and feelings.
Yeah.
And I was like, bro. Anyway, funny story about that. Funny story about that guy. A few years later, I ended up like going out on a date with his brother.
Oh
And
Lord.
I realized that by the time we went out, I knew it was his brother because their names rhymed. Like like your names, like their names rhymed. It's very obvious.
Like Erickson.
Right? Like Like it was, I mean, that's all I can say about it. Their names rhymed. So I was like, is that I was like, is Oprah your brother? And he was like, yeah. I was like, look.
Like Jamil Jameson.
I'm dying. Like one of those like Fumbi Funto, like, you're just like, oh, okay.
I know exactly. Yeah, that's okay.
Yeah. Anyway, but yeah, for real, switching topics this time. I said switching topics, and then I brought. So the question is, what are your thoughts on this? This is me being the lie of the show.
Mhm.
Can Black people be colonizers or gentrifiers, and or both? Is
Okay.
it can like obviously this is an opinion. And do you want me to talk about the Bali story context?
Yes, I want to hear
Okay,
about anything.
so on Twitter a few weeks ago, it was like a random day. I think it was a Sunday. This woman who's a Black American was tweeting, and she was doing a Twitter thread about how she and her partner, she is a lesbian, she and her partner both moved to Bali in the middle of this pandemic, and have been living their best life. So part of her tweet was talking about how back in Jersey or DC or wherever she lived, their rent was about $1,000 a month or more. And in Bali, they're paying $400 a month for a mansion, whereas their 1,000 was for like a one bedroom. They're, drawing those analogies, right? Like, I'm in Bali living an amazing life. She was working remotely or doing some business, so she was able to earn an income. And so she kind of talks about it and how Bali, like, they found a community of other Black American people, some who are queer, and was talking about how Bali has been really, really welcoming to them and felt LGBT QAA friendly and all of these things, right? So she had written this long Twitter thread, and at the end of the Twitter thread, it ended with, oh, and my partner and I, or maybe just her, has created a course, right? You know how everybody is creating a course about how you too can live your best life in Bali, right? And so Twitter thread drops. Of course, the first wave of people seeing the tweets are like, oh my God, I too want to live in Bali and live my best life, right? This is beautiful, beautiful pictures, all of that. And then eventually, which is how things do turn these days, the tweet got to, I think, like Indonesian people, or the Indonesian Twitter, and people started talking about how it's problematic that a lot of Americans do this, right? Especially in the middle of a pandemic, a country where there are, the healthcare system cannot handle this pandemic period, right? Certainly not foreigners coming in the middle of a pandemic and all of this. Because I think part of it, she has also given some tips about like how to either avoid or work around the pandemic related like laws and all of these things, right? And so eventually, and long and short of the story is
Okay.
they got
Wait,
deported.
wait. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I
Okay.
can hear you.
So you kind of like froze.
Oh no, what did you hear last?
For the last maybe 10 seconds or thereabout. So you said,
Okay.
uh, you said, this got to Indonesian Twitter, and they were talking about a lot of people.
Right.
Saying,
About how this kind of behavior is problematic because Americans, essentially being colonizers, gentrifiers, right? And eventually this thing got to the Indonesian Immigration Authority, and
oh,
these two women, or the one, I don't know who all got deported, but at least the main girl got deported back to the US very quickly, apparently, because they were technically violating the terms of their visa,
yeah.
only because of the working, right? Because I think it's one of those, I'm fairly certain that as far as Indonesia is concerned, Americans can be there quite a long time as visitors. But as a visitor, there are things you can and can't do. And part of like, I think the course and some of the stuff she had said was essentially giving people ideas about how to flout Indonesian laws around the pandemic. And so it's just like, based on XYZ things, you're in violation of your right to be in Indonesia, and they got deported. And so it sparked this conversation of, yeah, they were basically and of course some people are like, well, if they were white, would they have gotten dragged the same way? And it sucks, these queer women, blah blah. And also, like, Indonesia is a Muslim country. Indonesia is not LGBTQAA friendly, like, it's not. but of course, as a Black American person who's here, was spending a lot of money, who's hanging out with other Black American people, your community could feel, queer friendly, right? Anyway, so it was just an interesting conversation. And some people were like, well, as a Black person who's oppressed in America, like being able to just find a place to go find some joy and peace shouldn't be, dragged or whatever. But they got dragged. They got dragged by their hairs all over Twitter and dragged so much that they got dragged literally back to America. Anyway, so it's a very interesting. So there's some bits about that, right? Like technically the part of violating your visa, the part about like, are they colonizers or are they just, globally oppressed people looking for, an escape from American Black systemic racism. So anyway, it's just an interesting topic.
So, I mean, the answer to the question depends on the perspective you look in. Whose perspective? If you are looking at it from the perspective of the Indonesian people that are saying stuff, they may they're probably just painting a broad brush, right? Just in terms of just saying these foreigners, these Americans, who knows how they technically feel about a lot of folks coming into their country, moving there, driving up prices of things, living this exclusive lifestyle that they can't afford. Basically,
Right.
you know,
Making prices go up for
yeah,
things.
exactly, like driving prices.
Gentrifier behavior.
Exactly,
Gentrification is what we just defined.
exactly. So that is one part of it. Now the other part is the person that the Black woman that left America. So the idea of people living in America is actually not, especially not people. The idea of Black people live in America these days. I mean, there is a robust movement of
Right.
that are doing that for whatever reason. So, and they're doing it because people are doing it for many reasons. And partly because they just want to like get out and just feel and just be in a place where they don't feel like they have they have to carry this constant burden of being Black in America.
Right.
So when they go to a place like Bali or some other country for that matter, where um it just feels like, okay, I'm in a place that I don't have to
You
think about.
shed the weight of history, right, for a
Yeah.
little bit.
So I also understand, I definitely understand that piece as well. So can you be a gentrifier? The question is, does the definition of gentrifying has any connection to do with race, right? Like, does it mean that if does gentrify? I mean, because I thought my uh what I thought gentrifier meant was, I mean, being a gentrifying. What I think it means is the idea that you will have certain people that will go into some other place and displace the low income or the people that.
Right. Right.
So technically, you could have a bunch of rich Black folks go gentrify a Black
Yeah. I
tech,
can stop.
or they could, or they buy a white neighborhood. Like,
Right.
I don't know if
Yeah.
that ever happened before.
Yeah.
So,
Mm,
but that can technically happen. So, I mean, if you're going by that technical definition, yeah, you could call them gentrifiers. But if we're going by, the general feel,
the evil whites.
yeah, reality, at least in America, the reality of gentrification has to do with displacing Black people.
Right. Or other ethnic minorities.
Yeah, or the ethnic minority.
Yeah.
There is that additional layer of reality there. So at least in the context of Americans, that is what that is. Sometimes I feel like a lot of people, they can't wait to just label
To,
Black people as something, right? Like,
yeah. I so I thought about this topic quite a bit, like the bit about can Black people be colonizers, can Black people be gentrifiers, right? I think that yes. I mean, obviously, the answer I think the answer is yes, because there's nothing in those definitions that excludes Black people or solely means it's talking about white people. But I think that and then the other part of it is, as you and I often discuss about like our desires to travel and be all over the world and live all over the world, right? Like it's like how do you then, because okay, gentrifier is, we think about it as a bad word, and colonizer we definitely think of as a bad word. Um, okay, like as a black person who's listening to this, I want to move to, Costa Rica. Cost of living is great in Costa Rica, Guatemala. I'm going to learn Spanish. I want to live there, and I can always visit my family in Houston, that kind of thing, right? And you have a lot of that. Like, how does that person avoid being a gentrifier or avoid being essentially a colonizer? And I think that that question is the starting point, right? It's like thinking about like, okay, what is it to be a gentrifier? How do I not be a gentrifier while still doing the thing I want to do, right? I'm not going to say don't travel or don't move because you're scared of this word, but I think it's about like how you are conscious about your decisions and your actions and engaging in your community. I give the example of when I go to Nigeria, like, and when I lived in Nigeria as an adult recently, like I always thought about that, right? I'm like, look, like, how do I not be that person who, oh my God, this is like so cheap and buys it all, right? Because that's part of that kind of behavior, right? Whatever the it is, right? I always say that, like, I always try anyway to not over negotiate when in the market, right? Like I know, like, and it's a small thing, right? Like it's just a personal, like this is my way of not being a shitty person.
Right. So
Is
I I tend to think though that gentrification um and colonization is more intentional than that. Like and it's more
I
intentional,
don't think interesting. Okay.
both in its approach and in its scale. So for
Hmm.
so if you are an individual, like
Interesting. Yeah.
I don't know if I would correct you could be a douchebag. Like
But you don't think an individual person and their
right.
actions can be? I don't agree with that. Only because
So what I mean,
if 100,000 individuals,
what
right?
yeah, right. So what I mean by that is, you know, an individual making a decision to just say, hey, I want to do X, Y, or Z because I want to escape this.
Right,
I mean, we know we have technical terms for uh, technical definitions, for instance, for refugees, right? Refugees
right,
leave wherever they are and then move to some place and they go through whatever process, whether it's
right.
immigration, to try and get into a country. Now, would you say if say there is a particular part of this, I'll give you an example. There are different parts of the US that has predominantly people from certain countries. Maybe they were refugees,
Right,
or
right.
whatever.
Minnesota with Somalians.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Houston with Nigerians. So
They did a lot of, some people did start off as refugees during the Nigerian Civil War. So yeah.
would you say that those people are gentrifiers or
No, of course not. And I think it's sort of like it's the expat versus immigrant
yeah, yeah,
thing, right?
yeah.
When you go to a place with and there, and to the extent that there could be a technical definition for it, right? Let's say the definition of an expat is like a gentrifier, right? Like it's like when you are a person moving from the global north is what they call it, right? To the global south, right? Or a country with a high GDP to a country of low GDP to live, to work, to earn, blah, blah, all these things. It's different from a person moving from a country in the global south, in the, war torn, Middle Eastern, whatever, African country.
I think I modeled my definition. I guess the bigger point I was trying to just make is
I get you. Like, are
like
people moving for a better life to
yeah,
escape something?
exactly. Like so if as Ayo moves from Houston to I don't know, Guatemala, and
I ain't a refugee. That's for sure.
you make
Right.
a decision like, hey, I want to move, even if it isn't, you just want a new experience, right? You want to
Right.
whatever. And yeah, like is that I mean
And I think it's capital is a big part of it, right? Like, are you moving capital and power? Are you moving from a place of power, and are you moving with capital to be able? Because
so that
you
would
know,
that there some.
Yeah. Okay.
That was why I said there's got to be some intentionality behind it as well.
Yeah.
If you are moving because you want to go buy up stuff,
But what if it doesn't start that way? I go to Guatemala because I want to learn Spanish, right? I'm gonna be in Guatemala for 3 months learning Spanish, and by month two,
you don't
my
take.
Spanish teacher is telling me about her friend who's gonna sell their property and they're really in need of cash, and so they're gonna sell it for pennies on a dollar. And I'm like, yo, I text my law school homies in Houston, and I'm like, let's do this. Like low key, starting to blur that line from
I mean,
culture traveler to baby colonizer.
to real estate mogul. I mean,
You said what?
I said to real estate mogul, but
I mean, slowly I'm the next Donald Trump.
no, I think it's not a simple, it's not a straightforward thing. It's a little more complex than that.
Yeah, I agree.
But I would say there is a responsibility that you have
Yeah.
when you do anything in any society, when you move to a new society, I feel like there's a responsibility that you have to that society to preserve, even though you are
Yes.
bringing something new, but there's a responsibility that you have to preserve what is of that society as well. So I mean that's why you have companies in the past, right? Like they just go into different communities and they just think they you can do whatever. And these days you have all these companies that implement CSR, social responsibility
Yeah.
initiatives and things like that. And part of that is they try, at least they claim to try to want to.
They're going to try to want to. It's a
Yeah,
lot of posture in there, mister. You're
yeah,
like, they be lying. They be saying they're going to do this, but they lying. That's what you just said in so many words.
skepticism. Yeah, but at least what, a lot of posturing, and they have this. Yeah, they want to try and quote
Yeah.
unquote give back. So I think as an individual, if you move to a community where you have some sort of outside influence as well, especially when you have an outside influence, you have that
Mm-hmm.
responsibility as well. What I don't like sometimes is when you go to certain countries and you have like the expat zone, right?
Right.
Where you have,
Kenya is huge about that.
yeah, where you have, the folks
I
that,
see in Nairobi.
the rich folks who are foreigners who just hang out in this
Yep.
inclusive, for me,
Yeah. And that, like, that's to me is what that looks like,
yeah.
right? Like it's not pretty, and it happens all even in Lagos, right?
Oh yeah,
Like
yeah.
I remember, yeah, like you'll go to a party of like a friend was telling me in Lagos, a white friend actually was saying about like some people that she knew who were leaving Lagos after like some time, and like they didn't have any black
Nigerian.
friends, and it's like you live in Nigeria, how do you not have a single black person at your party?
You lived in Nigeria for 5 years,
It's like
and
it makes no sense. You were intentional about it.
yeah,
You wanted to be in the community, but not of that community.
oh, like you had no respect for that.
Yeah.
Who
And it
like
tells me that and those people will leave Nigeria and come to the US and they're Africa experts. And I'm like, first of all, bruh, get out of here.
nothing about Africa. People
You that's how you lived in a Boston part of Lagos. That's
yeah,
what you did.
exactly, like you basically lived in a place that is unrecognizable from any other part of the
For
world.
to the yeah, and people do that all the time. It's and to be honest, that sort of sounds like the community that this Bali story person was in, right? And I think that it feels a lot differently. Like if that exact same story, but it was all white girls, we would have been like, there go them, right? And I think that it's just like you said, like it's important to be conscious of these things. Like I think that if two Nigerian lesbians who had come to America illegally had written a thread like that about how, oh my God, now we live in Jersey and yeah, we're illegal immigrants, but we, we're both married to two different men to get our citizenship, right? Like, they would be in they would get deported. They would accidentally get deported to Congo so quickly. America will be like, oh snap, we ain't never know, whatever, get out, right? Like, and that's the thing that it's like people have to be conscious about because one, Black Americans are the wealthiest Black people in the world, right? Like Black Americans as a group. And so where it is, we can hold two truths at once, right? Like Black people are oppressed in America. It is systemic racism, all of these things, and the history of slavery and the history of Jim Crow and civil rights movement. All of these things are very true. But also it's like take a Black person out of America to the global South, right? So the countries that have much lower GDPs, and you're not wealthier than a lot of people. And you have to be conscious about that and be like, yeah, it's I want, and this is one of like, I want every single person who wants to visit Africa to do it and to have a blast, especially, well, every single Black, I mean, whatever, everybody, but like really Black people, right? Like come have that experience because it is very meaningful to the people that I know who have had it. But it's just important. It's like also be conscious, right? And not just Africa, obviously, like Indonesia, you know, whatever, Vietnam, all these places, just like.
So what do you think about, I mean, there are a lot of Black people that are moving to different countries and even in Africa. Like
yeah,
like Senegal. So what do you think about that? Like, you know, it will go.
I love it. Like, look, get out of this country. This country is trying to kill you. Get out.
Okay, so you don't have a problem with them, you know, with the idea that they may be gentrifying in Ghana or wherever.
And that, so that's sort of the crux of my point. I think that it's all okay. So like, I'm okay with a Black person leaving America, moving to Ghana. I'm okay with that. Are they inevitably going to do and be sort of gentrifiers? Yeah, they are. I think that I want people to be conscious of it and try to. So it's sort of like I was joking with my roommate about how we're gentrifiers in our neighborhood. We're in a part of Houston that is primarily immigrant, right? Like it's like we're now starting to have nice coffee shops. There's probably going to be a Starbucks. And, you know, as soon as the Starbucks come in, like everybody's taxes going up, right? Like it's like. It's happening already. We're the earlier stage of it, but it's happening, right? And we're not gonna like move now because oh man, we're gonna be gentrified. Let's get out of here. It's just a matter of like now, okay. Now it's like it's sort of like recognizing that privilege, like white privilege. It's like okay, because you have white privilege doesn't mean now you know go darken your skin and you know get rid of your whiteness. It's a matter of like how do I now act because of this new information, maybe new, and just you know not be an asshole, right? Like be conscious, be a part of that community, right? It's like those expats, make some Black African friends, right? Like go to their church, go to their house, be a part of that, and like participate, you know. So
the crazy one that you have people that live in Nigeria, you know, Americans or British folks, they go to Nigeria for like 5-6 years. You know, they went when they probably had like a 2-3-year-old, and when they come back, this is like a 7-year-old, and this person has an American or British accent. I'm like,
the kid, right? And, I mean, that is the clearest evidence of like your kids did mix.
It means you did not.
Like you were hyper vigilant and conscious about your child not, you know, because it's like
there's no way.
Yeah, especially kids. Like it's like you ain't let them mix with nobody. They went to the British International School.
Went to the British International School.
Like just and it's annoying and it's yeah. Oh yeah. Okay, here's something interesting. What? Because somebody tweeted this about how Nigerians get really really excited about like foreigners speaking Nigerian indigenous languages. So like, you know, there's like the YouTube Nigerian guy, white guy from Colorado or something who speaks Yoruba. Mm-hmm. There's a girl that I've seen her videos do that speaks.
I think
and their Yoruba is better than mine, 100%, right? And like, I mean, good for them. I love it, but I also am like, look, I'm not gonna get that excited about you. Like, I speak English, but where's my Nobel Peace Prize?
Like, you know,
look, you're not special. You just
I know what you mean. I mean, I think it is probably part of the infamy of those four. I don't know if infamy is there. but it's probably because you know the Nigerian languages, as an example, they're not um languages that are held in high esteem, right, in the world.
Yeah, even by us, which is
Exactly.
unfortunate.
Like the language is so bastardized. Like even in Nigeria, if you spoke proper Yoruba, like people looked at, like, there is this societal debasement
Yep.
there's this societal debasement of folks like
There are
me.
many, yeah, there are many kids who grew up in Lagos whose parents make sure that they don't speak. It's the same thing with like Spanish, Hispanic kids in Texas. A lot of them like don't speak Spanish because their parents are like, we don't want you to have a harder life, and we don't want, whatever. But it's obviously worse when it happens inside of the country itself. Like,
Exactly. So that's kind of like so yeah, I mean, so when you now see someone that is obviously foreign, that if you have no business speaking,
right.
is like you kind of get why somebody will learn English,
Yeah, it's yeah.
learn
They're like,
your
there's no reason
like
for you to be learning this language.
if you're learning
It
Yoruba,
will never get you a job, not a job you want anyway.
it's got to be just something that about your own personal. Maybe you are
Yeah.
being a babalawo, and and for folks that are listening, babalawo is basically like we talk about traditional religions, and people, it is mostly traditional African religions. So some of the ones Shango, all that stuff in Nigeria, it's the incantations and everything is usually is in Yoruba. So if you're learning Yoruba so that you can learn
Yeah. There's
religion,
a bunch of those folks in like Cuba and
yeah, exactly.
all
So,
these
so
places. Yeah.
maybe that makes sense, but outside of that, you're just like a college student that
Yeah.
year, 2 years in Nigeria, and you learned the language.
There is a Yoruba class at University of Texas. Um, there is. I'm very serious. I think University of Minnesota might have one too.
I think University of Wisconsin for sure. So those,
Oh, maybe that's the one I'm thinking. I think it was on UWM upside down. Those Midwestern states all look the same to me. Like those states near Chicago.
yeah.
Yeah, but
So
I mean, there were a bunch of Nigerian kids at UT that took the Yoruba one. Also, I'm sure a lot of non-Nigerian kids. But it's an interesting. I
yeah,
I just think like people should just like try their best not to be assholes and be a member of the community that you're living in. It's the same reason I always look a little funny at those people who like have lived in America for 40 years, those Nigerians who have lived in America for 40 years, and like their world is still Nigeria. It's like the same way
yeah,
we're talking about like the Boston Lagos. Like it's like they're living in
in
the,
such a bubble.
yeah, they're living in the Ikorodu or the Solo of Houston, and their lives are like that. And it's just like,
They're living,
but some people are not culturally curious. And I mean, I guess no shade to them, but I
yeah,
think
and that
it's
is
good for
everywhere.
people to be culturally curious.
That is everywhere, and yeah, I mean, yeah, it's not just yeah, you have yeah, Nigerian people that have been here for so long, and they have zero, they they haven't really assimilated. I mean, you sometimes
Yeah.
wonder. I mean, there's always that question of is it like where does that responsibility lie, right? Like in terms of assimilating, some countries are better at assimilating immigrants, but obviously
Yeah.
it's on both ends, and it also depends on, I guess, what you do and what kind
Right. I think your profession is going to be a big part of it. Right? Like if you move to America and you open an African food store,
I mean, come on.
like you're never going to because, you
Exactly.
know, yeah.
If you if
Um,
yeah, it's hard as adults to make new people, to make friends, to you know
but they meet new Nigerian friends at their church, at the
that's
mosque,
what
at
I'm saying.
I mean,
Those are,
obviously there is shared similarities,
yeah, those are
but
the only. And yeah, if you look at America, though, quite frankly, America is super segregated. Like most
yeah,
white people have
yeah,
white friends, most black people have black friends. So
yeah. And if your work does not bring you in contact with people who are different from you as
Forget
an adult, then you never will be, because like where,
no, yeah,
or if you're going to be, you're going to work extra hard for it, right? Like you're gonna have to join meetup and go play dodgeball with a bunch of randos. Like that's how
exactly,
you're gonna meet people.
exactly.
Like,
And for people that have been here for like 40 years, there was nothing like made up when they were
right,
here.
right.
Now they're 60. They're like,
Yeah.
you know, they all, when
Yeah,
I
like,
go like I've never been to Cancun. I don't know what America. I just I
well,
just
when I vacation, I go to Lagos,
I go
and
to
that's
Lagos.
it.
This is not vacation. You just go and work. Oh,
Go stretch yourself with your family. But uh, okay, switching gears a little bit, or maybe not switching gears. I feel like I don't know time wise where we're at, but
yeah, we probably have
um,
like 5, 10 minutes. Yeah.
yeah. Okay, so sort of a conclusion e topic. Um, Tell me either one thing you're looking forward to this week, or something interesting that happened last week, either to you, around you, or in the world
Something interesting that happened last week.
over the last week, or something you're looking forward to this week.
So over this last week, um, so I've been meditating, right? I've been meditating for a long time, and I use Headspace, and
Mm-hmm.
and I feel like just the purpose of life in general is becoming
Mm-hmm.
is. I feel like we make too much of what life is, right? Like, and we complicate things, we overthink things, like things that don't matter. We let it fester and fester, like, and but anyway,
So what's the meaning of life, Lai? Are we about to find out the answer to the meaning of life, in your opinion, obviously,
in my opinion, like the purpose of
or
life
purpose, I
is,
guess.
is to live it to the maximum of your ability, is to enjoy it to the maximum. So whatever that means to you, right? It's
Mm,
to enjoy. So, but in broad strokes, it just means to try as much as possible not to let the outside noise pollute what you think you want to do with yourself.
yeah, I think that ship has sailed for this generation
So
and probably the future ones, right?
maybe, I mean, so but if you want to do something, if you want to make a change, just do it.
Yeah.
Like, just do it. People tend to think that when you make change, the reason and I was having this conversation this past week. The reason why it seems like a lot of people don't make changes is because they think it is permanent.
Yeah, this reminds me of the conversation we had about like
Yeah. So people think it's permanent, and like once you commit to this, you cannot change course.
that's it for you. Yeah.
That's it. Like, well, you're allowed to just try this, to do something, and then and then you
Yeah. Well,
what,
I
what is the point of having a mind if you can change it?
I like that.
It is a useless
Yeah.
proposition.
I
So
think that people, how like in your, you can make something bigger or small. I mean, just like the example of like oh my God, is this a date? Right? That became such a big question in my mind that I needed to get the answer to it,
mhm,
even though in reality that evening would have gone exactly the same, right? But I think that our mind has a unique ability to make something, sort of zoom in at 1,000% onto something and zoom out from something else, and that makes us feel like it's more important or less important, right? It's just like the fact that like I see 10 people tweeting about something, but if I see all those 10 tweets at the same time, everybody's talking about this, whereas it's like, no, there were 10 people in a million who talked about it. I just saw them all at once. And I think that because of that, people over outsize, is that a word, the permanence of decisions, or how hard it is to change course and course correct, right? It's like
mhm.
if I do this and then I do that, then I'll never be able to. And it's like, look, and maybe, maybe we're both extremely privileged people who recognize that in our lives we have options and opportunities to course correct, right? And maybe other people don't. I don't know, because I think that you and I are on the same page about that. Where it's like, I'm like, look,
So yeah. So for me, I mean, in terms of, so someone asked me yesterday, like, what would you like to do? And I was like, you know what? Like, if any other thing isn't a big deal or what, I said I would like to write. Like, I would like to write books, like, that kind of thing. And the response was like, not just books. I said, and I was specific. Like, I would like to write about happiness. Like, just write about,
mm,
you know, because I feel like over the last year or thereabout, maybe 2 years, I have been intentionally trying to be happier,
hmm
if that makes sense.
have
Like,
you read The Happiness Project?
no, I've not read it. I've never read anything.
Um,
But
it's a
but
book about trying to be happy or happier.
but I've been super intentional about it because
Yeah.
I feel like I had an epiphany about 2 years ago. Like, whatever you allow yourself to, I always knew it, but it's just like, just as a human,
Yeah.
even me, you never know when something just bogs you down. It bogs you down. That's it. Like, you don't know how to deal with it, or you just let it affect you in ways that it shouldn't. But I feel like I've gotten better and better in just not caring. Like, when something happens, just go, okay, that's it.
Yeah.
Like, just move on from it. Like, I don't think about it anymore. Or when I think about it, it's not from the perspective of me worrying about it.
Yeah.
So I want to write about things like that because there has been a lot of instances, like even things that seem seemingly small in my life that I have, things that will happen that they don't bother me anymore. Nothing. I'll give you an example. I'm a big Arsenal fan, right? Like,
That's rough. I'm a fan. I'm not a big fan, but I
yeah,
became a fan through,
yeah,
because
through an ex. Yeah.
anyway. I was about to say, anyway, please continue.
So I'm a big Arsenal fan, and they are
Terrible.
they are terrible in the sense that they are such a roller coaster of a team, right? So today they will beat the best team,
Yeah.
go lose to like the pub team. Like,
Right.
so if you're an Arsenal fan, you have this roller coaster.
Capacity. You have a capacity for.
You know, it's just a ridiculous. And whenever they want to play, like, it doesn't matter. Like, especially when they want to play quote unquote a big game, you have these nerves. Like, and then if they lose the game, upset. And what I found is over the last, I don't know, this season, I actually don't get any stressed anymore. I'm just like, oh,
Yeah.
just watch, but enjoy the game, whether they win or they lose. If they win, I'm super happy. Like,
Yeah.
and if they lose, I'm not sad. Like, and I've actually found that I will find little things about the game that will make me happy. An example was they've been like on this 5 game winning streak, right? And then they lost the other day to a team called Wolves. Now
Mm.
they got 2 red cards in that game, which means that they finished the game with
With
two
two
less,
less players? Wow.
which is I mean the odds of that happening, is
Yeah.
astronomical. So they finished with and they lost 2-1. And one of the worst things you can do is kind of like go on YouTube and those Arsenal fan channels and watch people like I used to do that. And in my mind, I chose to just say, you know what, they played well, but the only way that they could be beat was by them going down 2 less men.
So
And
you reframed. So what I'm hearing is that you reframed the events in a way that made it positive.
it was just like, oh, so they got beat, but oh yeah, that was it. So and I don't even think at this. And I've noticed that like in different aspects of my life as well, where kind of like subconsciously, I'm starting to kind of like just even look at things. And I've always kind of been a positive person for the most part. So,
Mm-hmm.
or even now, I think. But anyway, so yeah, so that was an
So
epiphany that
you're
happened.
getting much more positive.
And to write about it. So to write about this,
Yeah.
like instead of sometimes you say you want to write a book. If you say that, you're never gonna do it.
You
You
gotta write an article.
like but what
And
I like writing. So I think what I decided is that I'm just gonna write about the small little happiness nuggets that
mm,
and hopefully it helps.
I like that.
So it will be like 500 word article. So that's what I'm gonna do. Maybe I will start in like 2 3 weeks and I will put myself on the schedule. But yeah.
Well,
What
that
about
was oh what was my question?
I think
Something.
what happened like this past week or what are you gonna do this next week?
Oh yeah. I really hope I have President's Day off work. If not, I have to take it off work. I have to figure that part out. But I am planning to go. Maybe if all of the stars align and everything works out, I'm planning to go to White Sands National Park in New Mexico. Never been. Also, low key, because I'm flying, my flight is into El Paso. Low key thinking about like crossing the border to go have a meal in Mexico. I was like, oh, why not? That sounds fun. Because it's like, plan is to fly into El Paso and drive an hour and a half into the national park. I saw a picture of it and I was like, I should go. So like I now have plane tickets to go for a day to White Sands National Park. It's like literally like the sand is white. It's very interesting.
Is that gonna be your first time in a national park?
Probably, yeah. I don't think I've ever been to another. I mean, not in America. I have been to, Kilimanjaro National Park, but not an American one. So I'm looking forward to that and hope that it does happen. So that's my looking forward to. And if not, I'll probably just eat a lot of something delicious, and that'll be fun too.
Cool. Well, on
Yeah.
that note, we have come to the end of the show. Thanks for
Woot, woot.
coming on for this episode. You have any last words?
We miss you, Lai. Oh, not Lai. We miss you, Manny. Oh
That-
man, you're gonna have to edit that. Oh man.
yeah.
Please edit it.
Well, folks, we'll see you on the next episode. So on that note, UBI.
Have fun, y'all.
Fun.